our little bobblehead figure. We've got our foam block that we always build our figures on, and a cake pop stick inserted in like so. And the first thing I'm going to do is make some legs. I've got some LMF fondant here. I'm mixing together some brown and some black to make a khaki color, mixed with some Tylose powder. We're going to roll this into a ball, and this is going to be for the shorts. And then we're going to form it into a long snake, keeping it a little bit thicker in the center and thinner as we go out. And this makes our legs, right? And we're just going to thread that right onto our stick here. And one of his legs is slightly thicker than the other, so I'm just going to stretch that out until they match. And I want his legs to be kind of short because this is supposed to be a cartoony bobble figure. And I'm just going to use a little pointed tool to create a little indentation in the bottom of each pair of pants. He's going to be wearing like khakis, but you could make him whatever color you want. And if you wanted to make shorts, I would roll out our piece of ivory and make it down into like feet, and then just roll out a flat piece of khaki and just wrap it around the legs to make shorts. Just going to get that a little bit damp in there. I'm going to leave the shoes. Okay. And then to make the body, I'm going to take some blue and create a cylinder for his upper body. Okay. And then on the bottom part, I'm just going to pinch around the edge to create the bottom of the t-shirt area so that it drapes over the pants kind of naturally, and you don't just have kind of like a weird lump at the bottom. So when you put this on, make sure we have a little bit of water here. So see how that fits just right over the pants. And then let's just squeeze, give a couple of squeezes to this upper body area to kind of form some shoulders. See how we're kind of pinching the top area. And if you wanted to, you could put in a couple little lines to indicate that this is a t-shirt. And on each side, we're just going to put in a little indentation with our ball tool, and this is going to make room for his shoulder area, his sleeves to be exact. Little piece of fondant for the neck, and another little piece to create the t-shirt neck. I'm just going to roll out a skinny piece of the blue and just flatten it with my fingers and just give a little texture. And wrap that around there like that. So you have a little bit of a t-shirt neck there. Sometimes I like to kind of use my fat ball tool to sort of put a little indentation in the front to kind of make it look like the pants are sort of settling on the shoes in a more natural way. This kind of makes it look not so boring. You can put a couple little lines in here if you wanted to. Just funny how like just making a couple little creases and things just adds a little more realism. So now we don't have sausage legs, we just got a little bit more realistic. Okay, so now I've got a big piece of modeling chocolate here. This is the Sweet-tastic modeling chocolate that I really like, but you could use your own if you know how to make it. I've got a recipe on my website, but I really do prefer Sweet-tastics because it's really, really firm. So when you first get the modeling chocolate out of the container, it's gonna be like rock hard. So you have to kind of knead it and warm it with your hands. I don't really recommend you softening it in the microwave because it'll get too soft, and we want it to keep that firmness. So you want to just soften it enough that you can work with it, but not so soft that it's melting in your hands, because it is chocolate. So let's break off a nice good sized chunk, and I'm going to shape this into basically a big egg shape, because my husband has a very triangular face, and I'm trying to exaggerate that, right? So I'm only going to worry about his face right now. So we want to think about where the eyes are going to be, about in the middle of the face. So just do a crisscross. I kind of know where I am as far as my facial features go. I'm going to I use my hands to smooth out any marks from any of my tools. And I'm going to take a small piece of modeling chocolate and I'm going to build up the front part of the face. And this is called the muzzle. And this is important. By the way, don't hold this chocolate in your hands because it'll just melt it. So try and work on the table. So we're building up the muzzle because this is the front part of your face is rounded, it's not flat. So if we don't build up the muzzle, then you end up with this sort of flat face that doesn't look so great. So we got that part built up. Kind of looks like he has a mask on. And then my husband, he has some big cheeks. So I'm going to take a ball of fondant and kind of put 2 points on either end and just place that right underneath the mouth, just like that. I'm going to do that on both sides, and that makes him look like he's smiling. I'm going to just use my Dresden tool to kind of smooth out the rough lines. And don't worry about it looking perfect at this stage. We're just building, you know, kind of the underlying structure of everything. So then, now I can kind of visualize where his mouth is going to be. So I'm just going to make a curved line, just like that, and lift up the top part. He's going to have big teeth. Just going to make the mouth nice and big. And it's easier to do this part before we add on the nose. That way we don't have to worry about it getting in the way. Alright. So now we can take just a little bit of our white. Push this up just a little bit. Now remember, whatever face you're looking at, you know, the features might be different. So just kind of pay attention to where the cheeks are, what the general shape of the face is. You know, each face is different. So I'm just going to press that right in there. Just wrap it all the way around. And it should be curved. And I'm just going to put a little line right in the center to kind of indicate that's teeth. And just kind of pressing your tool in right around the edges right there kind of defines the teeth away from the mouth. Because when you smile, you can actually see a little bit, your teeth actually pull away from the corners of your mouth there. So by just pressing in those corners, it makes it more realistic looking. And I'm just going to use my finger to kind of define the bottom lip here. The nice thing about doing these bobblehead figures is you can get a little bit more detail. See, he's coming to life here. Alright. So now I want to give him a couple little eyeballs here. So I'm just going to put a little water in here. And you can't really see much of his eyes when he's smiling. So I'm just going to put in 2 little dark spots here. Just 2 little pieces of fondant. And we're going to cover almost all of this. So I'm not going to worry about any whites or anything like that. Make sure you keep a little paper towel nearby to keep your hands clean. Okay, so I'm going to roll a little piece for the top of his eyelid. I'm going to try and work fast because you know the longer you hold modeling chocolate, the softer it gets. This one. And another little piece for the bottom. I'm really really paying attention to the shape of these bags underneath his eyes, because, you know, eyes are very defining characteristic. I'm going to try my hardest to do the other side, similar. Already getting soft in my hands. Okay, so once you have the eyes to where you want them to be, now granted, if you wanted to make the eyes more, you know, visible and not just squinty, I would do white down and then a little circle of blue or brown or something to make the pupil, and then put the modeling chocolate over for the, to make it look like the, you know, the upper and lower lids. But you don't have to do the lower lids, you know, you just pay attention to the features of the face that you're creating. Squeeze the upper forehead a little bit. All right, so let's make a nose. Just gonna roll a nice big piece of modeling chocolate, make it into a teardrop shape. I'm just gonna put that right there. Just use your ball tool to smooth out any edges. That's the nice thing about modeling chocolate, is that you can add pieces on top of pieces, and you can easily smooth out all of the seams, where fondant, you never can really get rid of all of those seams. Then I'm going to insert my Dresden tool on one side of the nose and just pull out to create a nostril. And then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Just smooth out the bottom as needed. Okay, need to build up his jaw area. So I'm just going to take some of our modeling chocolate, put a piece here. Can't forget the jaw. Be careful. Don't want to accidentally bump. I feel like his nose is too small. I think we need to make his nose a little bit bigger. And that's okay. You know, it's okay to reassess. I'm going to add the other side of his jaw first. He's got a very sort of square chin. Just gonna kind of take this right here and work that into the jaw. So you see, making these little bobblehead portraits is just, it's all about looking at the features of whatever your figure is and kind of exaggerating them. Try again with this nose, but make it a little bit bigger. That looks more proportionate. Little squinty eyes, big nose, big chin. This time I'm going to use a toothpick to do the nostril. Because I really want to be careful. better. And use your ball tool to kind of define the nostrils further. I'm just going to take a piece of monoline chocolate and just bring down to the chin and all the way up to where the nose is. And this creates that smile line. You can use a little bit of shortening on your fingers to smooth it out. But because we already built up the cheeks, it's kind of already the right, all of the pieces that we need for the face are already there. So it's like, you know, you're building up kind of the structure and anatomy of the face. And then when you put on all the details, it all looks right. Just gotta... Sometimes it's just a matter of finding the right tool that fits in the right area. And the more you exaggerate these features and the more you play up each one of these unique details, the more character your face is going to have. It's going to be more fun looking instead of just kind of like a flat face. See? Looking pretty good. My husband kind of has a bigger brow line, so I'm just going to build up his eyebrow area, just adding on some more monoline chocolate so that area is a little bit more defined. Just using some water to smooth out any little imperfections. Kind of looks like a crazy old man right now. Okay, so I'm going to put him onto his body, and then I'm going to build up around the neck to support everything. sure, because the back is a little bit flat, that you add just a little piece of modeling chocolate just to round out the back of the skull. And define the jawbone away from the skull area. Ears are just a little piece of modeling chocolate. You just roll into a ball and then squish onto the side of the head. And then you just use a ball tool to sort of smooth out one side. And then you kind of curve it into a C. And you know, at this size I don't really worry too much about all the details in the ear because it kind of translates over. As long as there's a ear shape there, kind of gets the idea across. You could just put like a little, you know, like a little hole on either side at the end, and that kind of finishes the ear. But in my experience, the more you mess with it, the worse it looks, so just smooth out those lines. Okay, so putting on some hair. Start at the back. My husband has kind of some long hair, and I like to use this soft sugar shaper. So I roll out a little piece of modeling chocolate, and I put some little line textures in it, and then that way I can kind of curl it and put it onto the head. So you got to start at the neck and then work your way up. You can't start at the top and go down, otherwise you'll end up having this big gap between the hair and the neck. It just doesn't look right. Just be careful not to smush the front of the head as you're doing all of this. Kind of pay attention to how the curls and things are to kind of recreate the hairstyle. You can put some little like hair kind of shapes with the sugar shaper. I love doing the hair. I think it's fun. I think it needs like a little bit more hair kind of down in this area. I need to tell my husband to get a haircut. Got too much hair. Although it does look pretty good. He's kind of balding right now. Create this little swoop that he has going on the side. Make sure you pay attention to the shape of the hairline. Mix it up a little bit more. And this one I'm going to leave kind of streaky so that it has kind of almost highlights. Pretty good. And I need to give him some eyebrows and some facial hair. Other side of your... Make sure the sideburns match. It's funny how old he looks without eyebrows. Alright. Eyebrows. Pretty simple. Just a small piece of fondant. And just mimic the shape. Just flattening. This is actually fondant, I should say, not monoline chocolate, because it's a little bit easier for my hands to handle without melting. Just remember, this is a cartoony version. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's not supposed to be like an exact representation. And to make a little bit of an edible paint, I'm going to be able to paint onto the modeling chocolate. I'm going to use some regular vegetable oil and some dusting powder. I'm using deep brown from the Sugar Art. And you just mix that together. I've made way too much, but Basically, this makes a nice oil-based paint that's great for making facial hair. Put a couple little highlights and lowlights in the hair. Just to give it a little bit more depth. And I'm just going to put a little dot right in the middle. Try. Adds a little shine to the eyes. There we go. Got Dan's cartoonized face. And then we'll finish his arms and his legs when we put them on the cake. So I don't have a 9-inch board, so I'm just going to use my pan as a guide onto my 10-inch board and just cut it down to size. I'm going to put a little dab of buttercream here. Put my first cake, actually, I'll put top side down. And then I'm going to tort each of these cakes by just making a line right in the center with my knife and then making small cuts until I've cut all the way through. Doesn't that funfetti look awesome? And I'm filling with a shelf-stable strawberry filling. I get this at the restaurant supply place, and I like this one because you don't have to refrigerate it. And I'm just gonna kind of do like a mixture of buttercream and the strawberry to make like a little strawberry cream flavor. And I'm not going quite all the way to the edge because I'll fill that gap with buttercream on the outside so that the filling doesn't squish out. So you see how we have this gap right here? I'll just squish buttercream in there. You could dam this too, but I don't feel like getting another thing dirty. I wish you could smell this. It smells so good. I like a lot of filling. You don't have to tort all these layers. Just trimming this off a little bit so that it's level. For me, the cake is just kind of a way to hold the filling, so I usually have a lot of filling. We're just going to do a nice light crumb coat over everything and pop this into the freezer while we start preparing our sushi ingredients. Okay, so our cake's been chilling for about an hour or so. Just going to put on another layer of buttercream. Don't pay attention to the top too much because it's just going to be covered. It doesn't really matter if it's straight. If you want to get your sides super straight, you can use a bench scraper. This is a Fat Girl Cakes bench scraper. It's really tall, so it's perfect for this kind of cake. You can just scrape off, add back on any empty spaces. I'm going to pop this back in the freezer just until it's firm on the outside so we can put our outside layer of fondant on. So I have my seaweed green fondant here, and I made this using the black fondant recipe, but instead of using the all black, I used 1 teaspoon of green, 1 teaspoon of ivory, and about a half a teaspoon of black. Roll out a nice big piece. This is a big cake. Make sure you rotate often so that you make sure nothing's sticking. I have a large piece of PVC here that I use to roll up my really big pieces of fondant. Just a little bit. Yeah, I think that's big enough. Just gonna let the air out right there. You see, because this is so big, it basically covers itself, and the LMF is super stretchy when you first make it, so you don't have any problems with wrinkling. Even though this is seaweed, and a little wrinkling might look authentic. Basically what I'm saying is it's bigger is better. Just going to build up this edge. Use our fondant smoother, make sure that everything's right up to the edge. I'm going to trim off the excess because it's kind of pulling it. And you can very carefully cut the bottom edge. And then we're going to take some tin foil and we're going to crumble it up and just apply some kind of texture to the outside so that it looks a little bit like wrinkled seaweed and not just smooth fondant. Really pinch that upper edge so that we get kind of thin. Don't want it to look perfect. And you can come back with another kind of tool and put some more texture lines in it. Make it look more beat up and wrinkly. Basically, the more texture, the better. Okay. And then we actually are going to cut out the top part of this. Just take that out. And we're going to take some of our green fondant and roll it into a snake. It doesn't have to be perfect. And we're going to make a spiral. like that. Make sure you pinch the upper edge. That. I'm going to put this into a piping bag. And I got a little round tip on the bottom of this, but you don't really need to use one. So basically all we want to do is just make sure this is just covered with some buttercream, because this is going to be our glue. Got some avocado that I made, and now this is a combination of ivory and green. And I'm just going to kind of, let's see, this kind of right here. I don't want it too clean on top. I'm just going to use my tin foil to kind of give it some texture on top. Just nestle that right there. And to make my salmon, I'm going to take some of my modeling chocolate that's kind of ivory pinky color. Just add some red and some pink. Let's mix that up and see where we are. We want kind of a corally pink color. We actually want it to be on the touch on the orange side. So I'm just going to add just a little bit of ivory, which has yellow kind of undertones. A little bit more yellow. Have some yellow fondant, so I'm just going to mix that in so I don't make it too wet. Because once you start adding in too much food coloring, it just gets really soft. There we go. It's more of like an orangey pink. Salmon color. Square. I'm going to roll out a very, very thin piece of white. As thin as you can really get it, without it being see-through. I'm just going to put those on top. Use a sharp knife to trim off the edges. Just on this end. And then about that thick. Just going to press that together. Cut this in half. Should have a little striped piece of salmon. That right there. Salmon. I have these gummy bears here, and I'm going to pick out the orange ones and just kind of put them in this area right here to look like fish grub. And then I'm just going to put one little piece of something that looks like crab. I'm going to take one little piece of my white, and I'm just going to roll this into kind of a flattened shape. Again, not trying to be too perfect. I'm going to take some of our leftover salmon and just kind of go around the outline, just like that. And I'm just going to dust just the edges just a little bit with some red. This is a Poppy by Ruth Ricky. It's just a nice kind of pinky red. Just go around the edges. Stick that right there in the center. And then for the rice part, I am going to use mini marshmallows. Just kind of push those into the buttercream. To make the salmon look like it's really wet, we're gonna glaze it with a little bit of corn syrup. Just brush that right over it. Put some on the crab too if you wanted. Over gummy bears. And this really makes them look real. This is optional, but I'm going to airbrush a little bit of black down around the edges just to give the whole thing a little bit, another level of realism. Just kind of painting in some random lines to just kind of accent the wrinkles and all the shadows. A little bit of shadow down around my avocado. Finish with a light dusting of water to clear up any powdered sugar. All right, Dan, he's gonna sit right here. Turn his head this way. So to make the arm, take a small amount of the modeling chocolate, not too much because the arms are small, remember. Roll that out, and maybe a little bit more. Roll that out. I'm going to flatten one end and then pinch right underneath to make the hand. And then we're going to cut out a triangle. And then 1, 2, 3. Let's kind of clean up those fingers a little bit. And we're going to wrap a little piece of our blue around the top to make a sleeve. Just like that. here. I think his arm's too long. Shorten it a little bit. I told you it doesn't need to be very long. It's here. Take a small piece of my armature wire. This is a very thin gauge anodized floral wire. It has a coating on it, so it's okay to insert into the cake. You can get this in the floral section at like a craft store. I'm just gonna insert that right down and then make a little bend. Make sure you insert enough so that the cake is supporting the arm. I'm just gonna trim right about here. I'm gonna make another arm and just insert it right on the wire. It's looking proportionate. Carefully push that down onto there. Just take a nice thin piece of the blue, just wrap that around. Lost some of your hair, Dan. And then last but not least, he needs some shoes. I'm just gonna do something real simple. Just gonna get those little holes we made earlier damp. I'm gonna give Dan some brown shoes. Just going to roll out a small ball and then point one end. And then point the top and flatten the bottom. Kind of skinny it out. So it's just making kind of this really elongated tear shape. Very, very simple. You can put a couple little lines on top to indicate shoelaces, but I mean, we're just talking tiny details. And just insert that right into the foot. And just hold it there just to make sure that it's glued. If you need to, you can just put something underneath the feet while it dries to just kind of secure them. The last thing we need to do is put the cake on the cake board. So just use an offset spatula to lift it up and then just place that onto the cake board. And there we have it. Here is the finished bobblehead sushi cake. Looks pretty cool. And as always, if you guys have any questions about how I did anything on this cake, just let me know by leaving a comment or emailing me or messaging me on Facebook or Patreon. Any of those ways will work, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial, and I see you guys next time.